from a cold and feeling kind of weak, so bear with me. If you can't hear me, move up a bit, because this is as high as my voice will get. Thank you very much. Okay, so in Dwyer and Peter's study with over 3,400 students enrolled in international education students programs from 1950 to 1999, their findings revealed that studying abroad is usually a defining moment in a young person's life and continues to impact the participant's life for years after the experience. Dwyer and Peters also found support for the more is better approach in the sense that a longer study abroad produces a lasting impression. However, as Lewis and Niesenbaum, among others, have indicated, today many students are opting for shorter experiences for a variety of reasons, such as financial, curricular, and family issues. Japan is no exception. With Japan's ambiguous international relations, the stagnant economy, and the growing presence of ISIS worldwide, issues such as welfare, security, and financial stability have become decisive factors for Japanese students considering a study abroad program. In this presentation, I will reflect on this situation based on findings from my survey conducted with over 500 students at Asia University. In the limited time I have, I will attempt to discuss the range of anxieties which students have towards studying abroad and offer potential solutions to address their concerns. Oh, I should have used this one.
You can try for that. I think we need to switch it
Oh,
on. It's not.
should I be pointing at something?
No, it's not. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, well that's better. Okay, so according to MEC's 2010 report on the number of students going abroad, the number of students going abroad in 2010 dropped by at least 8,300 students compared to the previous year. Although Professor and researcher Sumio suggests that this drop in numbers is partly related to the war in Iraq, the spread of SARS, incidents with Japanese hostages such as the murder of journalist Goto Kenji, and the growing reports of terrorist attacks worldwide, she nonetheless argues that it's difficult to assume that the current world situation has a direct impact on the increase or decrease of the numbers of students studying abroad. Needless to say, there are other factors to consider. For instance, in an analysis of the policies and programs of 11 countries and the EU, the Australian Education International Office summarised several factors that influence students embarking on study abroad programs. Some of these factors are university-educated parents, previous international travel experience, family income, program cost, local commitments to work or living arrangements, being out of the loop, and relationships with family and friends. Furthermore, curricular issues in particular were found to be obstacles to some. While I concede that a number of factors such as the global economy, family issues, and so on need to be taken into account, I also believe that we cannot deny the powerful impact that news media and world events have on informing individuals' decisions to go abroad. For instance, in Iwakinami's research in 2013 with students from Nagoya University, some of the concerns that students voiced in the wake of the bird and swine flu pandemics included communication difficulties with hospital staff. Furthermore, a number of students also referred to the gun problem, which I assume refers to the situation in the United States, as well as students who refer to terrorism. On the American end too, the FBI brochure for students going abroad explicitly states the following: evade criminals and terrorists by being aware of your surroundings and alert to the possibility of surveillance. Take mental notes of anyone following you and promptly report it to the appropriate security officials and/or the US Embassy or Consulate. In general, criminals will strike when their target seems most vulnerable and lax about his/her security. If anyone grabs you, make a scene, yell, fight, and try to get away. In an age of heightened security and mixed information from official news sources and social media, it seems that cynical, cash-strapped, and self-preserving millennials face quite a lot of hurdles when venturing abroad, and a lot of decisions arguably involve careful or individual risk assessment. For instance, some of the questions students may find themselves asking is, what if it's a waste of time or money? What if I contract something? What if I get kidnapped? What if I get shot? What if there's no Wi-Fi, Netflix, or products available for my Uber-specific dietary requirements? These are just some of the major and perhaps trivial sources of anxiety for students ambivalent about studying abroad. However, without speculating too much, I'd like to now proceed by discussing the results of my research conducted last year. So basically, my research at Asia University set out to determine the extent to which freshman students were interested in studying abroad and to determine what they perceived as either hurdles or decisive factors when considering a program. Why Asia? Quite simply, Asia sends a lot of students abroad. According to JASO's 2013 report on outbound students, Asia University ranked 10th, coming in before its Global 30 counterparts, Kyoto University, which was 12th, and Sofia University, which was 15th. Considering also that all freshmen, regardless of faculty, have to study freshman English classes 5 times a week for over 2 semesters, it was a suitable environment to gauge and rouse the students' interest in studying abroad programs. So, the on-site research was conducted with over 500 students during the study abroad promotion week. It involved an online survey which was distributed in class and accessed via smartphones or other devices. The results were then interpreted via Google Forms. Okay, so the remaining open questions necessitated careful reading and interpretation, but that was just my own work I had to do. Okay, so for instance, as you can see in the chart here, when examining responses in regard to the disadvantages of studying abroad, many of the responses were filtered into the following major categories: linguistic, academic, social, health, welfare, security, financial, cultural, and daily life, and psychological. While such phenomena such as homesickness can fall under several categories, such as psychological, cultural, or social, in cases where the word homesickness was specifically used, such responses were classified as psychological. Looking at the chart here, it goes without saying that the greatest hurdle and thus disadvantage of studying abroad is the financial investment that needs to be made. Basically, there's no absolute guarantee that one's English will remarkably improve to a specific level, and even if one's English does improve, there's still the initial down payment that needs to be made. This was aptly expressed in the following response by respondent 423. I think there's a big risk in going all that way only to fail for people who are only a little bit interested in going abroad. So what I'm concerned with more is the second greatest concern, which was associated with health, welfare and security. Equally as disconcerting were the amount of psychological issues which were alluded to. In descending order, the following factors were also evaluated by respondents as disadvantages: not specified, not sure, linguistic issues, language barriers, cultural barriers, issues concerning social relations, problems associated with daily life, issues concerning academic affairs, and other. Okay, now responses expressing concern about health, welfare, or security range from legitimate to extreme. For instance, respondent 72 expressed a fear of being shot dead. Respondent 4 suggested that security was probably bad, so it's scary. And respondent 59 argued the following: first and foremost, there's the possibility of losing one's life in a world of guns. If I cannot communicate, I will be bullied. Guns are prohibited in Japan. It's unsafe there. Among security issues, others worried about a lack of hygiene, getting fat as the diet is extremely meat-based, or the lure of taking drugs. Some of these things, by the way, reflect some of the concerns that were raised in Iwaki's research. Many of Iwaki's respondents, particularly those who were studying in Western countries, were concerned about their health and nutrition, and quite a number of both female and male students voiced their concerns about not getting enough vegetables into their diet or getting fat. Perhaps not completely irrational fears considering the obesity rates in the US and the record number of centenarians in Japan, but nevertheless, such anxieties can be considered as psychological barriers. That's very dense, bear with me. However, to differentiate between responses concerning health and safety and those with an implicit or profound fear of homesickness, it was necessary to create the category psychological. To elaborate, responses belonging to this category not only directly referred to homesickness, but rather than expressing one of many possible sources of anxiety related to the potential destination, such responses revealed a lack of direction or tendencies towards separation anxiety. Respondent 45, for instance, spoke of a fear of forgetting the main purpose and the whole trip, therefore being a waste in itself. In terms of latent homesickness, Respondent 9 argued that one might end up forgetting Japan. Respondent 86 was concerned about ending up wanting to return to Japan earlier than expected, while to a greater extent, Respondent 23 was afraid that being abroad might reduce one's overall time spent in Japan. Reasons classified under the category social reflected more or less the same forms of anxiety, but the sources of anxiety were evidently tied to social relations. Such respondents reported a fear of missing one's family, not being able to meet up with friends, or the possibility of failing to form friendships while abroad. On the other hand, the perceived cultural demerits included aspects such as feeling stressed from failing to get accustomed to life in the host country, or the differences in habits between Japan and the host country. However, to a greater extent, one respondent perhaps encapsulated the extremity of cultural barriers in the following comment: "I think a part of it is nothing but patriotism and so on, but the fact that I have chosen my home country, Japan, as a study abroad destination speaks for itself." Whether such anxiety is tied to differences in culture, homesickness, or simply a language barrier, some respondents noted that the disruption of daily life was an unpleasant factor. Comments simply arguing that one might run into difficulties or trouble in daily life were not uncommon. Respondent 152, for instance, added that it's not just the language or relationships. If one does not get used to the place, trouble will occur in daily life. So whatever the origin of anxiety may be, whatever the perceived disadvantage may be, one could argue that the majority of these concerns stem from a fear of failure and or a fear of change. While such issues could be characteristic of newly enrolled in undergraduate students, it also highlights a need for greater security measures and feasible guarantees. But how can we address these issues and thus alleviate such fears by offering various guarantees in study abroad programs? In Japan's case, I argue that we needn't go beyond the Anzen Anshin marketing approach. For those of you who don't know Anzen Anshin, it simply means safety and security. For those of you living in Japan, perhaps you've noticed the over-appropriation of the Anzen Anshin slogan by corporations and organizations all over Japan. Perhaps you've seen it at train stations, at family restaurants, at supermarkets, in residential handbooks, in beer advertisements, or even funeral directors' websites. Because you can only bury someone safely. Okay, so now, although the term Anzen Anshin was around before the Hanshin and Great East Japan earthquake, Kinoshita Tomio from the International Institute for Advanced Studies suggests that it only became a buzzword in the media and politics around the beginning of the 2000s. However, in a post-3/11 context and in the wake of ISIS's expansion in the West, I'm of the belief that Anzen Anshin marketing is at its most pervasive peak. And this is precisely why it could be appropriated to market study abroad programs to risk-phobic millennials. After all, as Kinoshita points out, not only do most Japanese people dislike taking risks, but there is no comparable word to risk in the Japanese language. In fact, the definition of risku in the Japanese dictionary is hiken, danger. Okay, so how can we cater for this very specific niche of Japanese millennials? First of all, as I've suggested in another presentation, groups, goals, and guarantees are the kind of package tour-like aspects that programs should strive to offer. Safety groups to provide a sense of security, goals to focus the learners and provide a sense of achievement, and guarantees to ensure that venues are clean and safe and that healthcare and other social services are available. It sounds like common sense, but in order to reach a greater amount of this bracket of insecure young students, universities in Japan need to emphasize these aspects more, organize their programs more meticulously, and program packages need to bear some kind of quantifiable and standardized star rating or stamp of approval on a national level. Basically, I believe that if we take into account Japan's love of rankingu and kuchikomi, or word of mouth, and produce a universal ratings-like system for study abroad packages based on reviews such as the ones you see on TripAdvisor, Rakuten, and Amazon, perhaps the notion of Anzen Anshin can be more effectively conveyed to young students and their parents. Although Mainichi Education Corporation provides plenty of information for prospective study abroad students, there are very few signs of ratings and or ranking systems, and overall, the website is dense with information, requires a lot of reading time, and is rather off-putting for young students. In this light, if MEXT and the international offices at universities nationwide can collaborate and provide an attractive and user-friendly guide of programs that include star ratings and reviews based on a set of standard criteria, perhaps a sense of consumer trust can be built, and this in turn may encourage more students to invest in study abroad programs. Now, although this is subject to debate, I propose the following 10 criteria upon which the star ratings might be based on. Again, this is dense, so I'll just run through it quickly. So campus security ratings, city security ratings, insurance ratings, hygiene ratings, quality of instruction ratings, workload ratings, success rate, campus nutrition rating, local nutrition rating, student support rating, etc. Okay, so as you can see, there is no mention of cost, performance, or economic factors. Why? Because studying abroad is inevitably expensive wherever one goes. It seems that students concerned with selecting the cheapest program most often end up opting for shorter programs or convincing themselves that through intensive self-study that they can achieve the same results. Wrong. Now, even if the Anshin Anzen approach is sometimes more expensive, I argue that building consumer trust and branding it into study abroad programs is perhaps one of many ways to safely and successfully send insecure students away in an age of insecurity. Thank you very much for listening.